How's it going, guys? Welcome back to another exciting video. In the last video, we implemented the login and logout functionality. And then the goal for this video is going to be to implement functionality to check whether a user is authenticated whenever you refresh the page. That way the user can actually remain logged in on page refreshes. And then also we want to load the user from the user's profile. So those are going to be the two things we try to tackle here. So let's get right into it. So right now I'm running my database, and then there's also another thing I want to adjust in the accounts views. Something I noticed is this right here for the check authenticated view. So we fixed this up a little bit, but there's also another thing, and that's this method decorator. So you have to be authenticated by default to access this view, which means it's CSRF protected by default. So this method decorator is a little redundant. So I'm just going to go ahead and remove that. So that's just a small adjustment there. So with that out of the way, let's go ahead and start to tackle implementing first the checking whether a user is authenticated. So that's going to be the first thing. So I'm going to open up my auth or my types here and also my auth action folder. Let me zoom in a bit. Close this up. And close this up. There we go. Now let's go ahead and make some more dispatch states. So I'm going to copy this, paste over here. And then what I'm going to have is authenticated. So authenticated success, authenticated fail. And then I'm also going to have some dispatch states for the retrieving of the user profile. So I'm going to do load user profile, success, and fail. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a separate folder for the profile action creators. So let me organize this a little with some comments. So this will be my profile dispatch states. And then up here, I'm going to have my auth dispatch states. So that's how I'm going to organize this. So first, let me go ahead and work in here. So I'm going to bring in my authenticated success and fail dispatch states into here. There we go. And then right at the top here, I can start working on that action creator. So I can, let's say, copy this, my login action creator, just paste right up here, and let me adjust this so that we can check whether a user is authenticated. So check authenticated is going to be what I call this. It doesn't take any parameters. We're going to have an asynchronous dispatch. And then this is going to be a GET request, and it's going to go to account/authenticated. So just like this, accounts authenticated. I won't have any body, and I won't have this header here. So I can remove this body. So we don't need that header, and we don't need the body that has the with credentials to true, because this is a GET request. So it's enough just to pass it like this. And then our cookies are going to be sent along with this request by default. All right, so we have this endpoint correct. We have our headers correct. Now let's go ahead and tackle this section. So I'm just going to remove all this, and I'll remove this. So now let's start with sort of a fresh slate here. So the first thing I want to do is maybe go and kind of double check so we can see how things are actually working right now. So if we go into this check authenticated view, if we find that the user is authenticated, we're going to return a JSON response with an is authenticated object, which is equivalent, or which has the data success. If this doesn't work, we're going to have an error. And then if something went wrong, we're also going to have this error, something went wrong when checking authentication status. So these are our JSON responses that we are working with. So first thing I can do is maybe check if response.data.error, if this is present. Let me close that side window. Or if response.data.is authenticated is equal to error. If either of these things happen, I'm just going to dispatch a type of authenticated fail. All right. And then I can also pass along a payload. And this payload's going to be false. All right. Now, that is if these things occur. Else if response.data.is authenticated is equal to success. There we go. In this case, what I'm going to do, I'm just going to copy this here. This is going to be an authenticated success. And our payload is going to be true. So basically, we want to adjust that is authenticated piece of Redux state to be either false or true, depending on whether this is successful or fails. And then let me just have an else case just in case. And I'll put that here. We're just going to have an authenticated fail if anything else occurs, but nothing else should occur. This should handle everything. And then also if any kind of error happens, again, we're going to dispatch this authenticated fail. So this right now should be good for our action creator. Let me double check. I believe everything looks good here. So let's go ahead and now work on our reducer to handle these dispatch states. So I'm going to bring in authenticated success, authenticated fail, and let's go ahead and handle these. So right at the top, I'll do case authenticated success. This is gonna, oh my goodness, return, there we go. So our state, and then we're gonna have our payload. Or sorry, not payload. We're gonna do is authenticated is gonna be set to payload. And our payload is gonna be either true or false, depending on whether this succeeded or failed. So I can actually go ahead and paste right under here the authenticated fail. So these are both going to do the same thing. They're going to leave the rest of the state untouched, but they're going to adjust this is authenticated to whatever the payload is. So even though these are doing the same thing, I'm still going to have these separate dispatch states just so we can see whether in fact we did an authenticated or a check authenticated request that was successful or whether it failed. Because if we just have one dispatch state, like something like check authenticated, then we're not going to know whether it really passed or failed. I guess we will because is authenticated will be adjusted correctly, but this is just a nice way to dispatch either a success or a fail. So yeah, I think I'm going to leave it like this. But if you want to just have one dispatch state, then that's fine as well. So that should be good for our reducers. So now we have to actually go ahead and utilize this brand new action creator we made. And the place I want to use it is in layout. So why do I want to put it in layout? Let me open up app.js real quick and take a look at this. So right now, when we refresh our page, we are going to render this layout. And then this layout has this children prop. And this children prop is going to be one of these routes. So whenever we navigate through, we are not going to be re-rendering layout itself. We're just going to be re-rendering its children component, which is one of these things here. So basically, whenever we refresh the page, our layout is going to render once. So in our layout, it makes sense to do the request to check whether a user is authenticated because we don't want to make unnecessary API requests. I don't want to check whether the user is authenticated every time they navigate to another page. I just want to do it whenever they refresh the page. So the layout is the best place to put this. So let me first import the connect helper. This is from React Redux. And I'm going to wrap my layout component with the connect helper. Then I also want to bring in my action creator. So I called it check authenticated. This is coming from actions/auth. And now I have to bring it in here. So first I'm going to have my pieces of Redux state, which I'm not going to bring in any here. And then my check authenticated action creator. And I also have to bring this in here so I can use it in my layout component. So there we go. Now let me change this to the parentheses. And then I'm going to wrap this stuff in a return. Indent it over. There we go. And now I'm going to use a useEffect hook. So let me bring that in. And then whenever this component mounts, I'm going to run this action creator. So use effect. And then here I'm going to run check authenticated, which is my asynchronous request, which will check whether I am authenticated. So this should be good. And now because I'm using hooks, I also have to use a capital letter here. And with that, we should be set to go here. So let me go ahead and build this. So I'm going to open a new terminal, navigate into front end, and then do npm run build to build my project, and then we'll test this out. All right, so that finished building. Let's make sure we are running our server. So I'm going to navigate into backend, activate my virtual environment, and run the server. All right, let me refresh this app. Right now, if we check our dispatch states, we get authenticated failed. So that is what we expect. Now let me go ahead and log in. So I'll log in with Billy. All right. So now we have the login success, which triggered. And right now we have is authenticated is true and username is Billy. So now if we refresh, we want to remain authenticated. So let me refresh and there we go. We remain authenticated. Although one thing you're going to notice, so is authenticated was updated to true when we refreshed our profile, but our username is now empty. So this is something that when we refresh, we want to make sure that our username also remains what it was. And we're going to do that with a load user action creator. So that's the next thing we're going to work on. And then of course, if I log out now, I am now logged out. So is authenticated false. So that all works. So now let's go ahead and tackle the load user functionality. All right, let me close up the terminal. And let me close these things up. Okay, so right now in our actions type, we created these dispatch states. So we're gonna make use of those. But one thing I wanna do is create a separate file now for our profile-based action creators and reducers. So that, because these aren't really things that deal with authentication, they more deal with the user profile. So just to make things more organized and not have so much code in one file, because right now this is already getting quite lengthy. So why don't I just create another file here, call it profile.js, and then put my action creators in here. And then same thing with the reducers, create profile.js, and then have my reducers here. And then I also have to bring that in my index reducer. So import profile from profile. And then in my combined reducers, I can bring in profile. So this way we stay a little more organized. Okay, so let me start off by working on this action here. So I want to import cookies from JS cookie. I want to import Axios from Axios. And I want to import my dispatch types. So load user profile success and load user profile fail. And this is coming from types. There we go. And now with that, we can create our action creator. Export const load user, I'm going to call it. This is going to be async dispatch. And all right, so the first thing I need to do is get my correct headers. We already created these headers before in Auth, so why don't we just go ahead and copy one of these that we need. So right here in the login action creator, I already have the headers I need, so I'm just going to go ahead and copy that and just paste that in here. That way I don't have to retype all of that. We already retyped that enough times. And another thing, if we go into the backend user profile views, so right now the get profile view, this is a get request. And then the URL for that, it's going to be profile/user. All right, so first thing to note, because this is a GET request, I don't actually need this. So it's enough to have it like so. And then I can do const response equals await axios.get. Let me close this side window. And then I can use my backticks, do process dot, oops, I need the $ curly brace, there we go. Process.env.react app API URL. And this is going to be /profile/user. This is what is going to retrieve my user, and I have to pass in my config. All right. And then another thing, when I make this response, I want to make sure I wrap that in a try catch. So let's do that. There we go. All right, so now with that, we can go ahead and do our dispatch states. So here I want to dispatch, I'm going to do type is my load user profile success. So this is when we are successful. And then my payload is going to be response.data. And then if any sort of error occurs, we want to make sure we handle that. So let's go ahead, open this view again. And let's take a look here. So if anything goes wrong, we're going to get this error as our JSON object. Otherwise, we're going to get this profile, which is going to have our user profile as an object. And then we're also going to retrieve this username. So one thing I can handle is if we get this error object, let's make sure that we dispatch an error. So if response.data.error, then what we want to do is dispatch an error or fail here. And then we aren't going to have any kind of payload. And then we're also going to do the same thing here. And then let's also make sure we have an else, because else we're going to do this. There we go. So now we have our action creator. So we haven't taken use of this cookies yet, but we're going to make use of that when we do our update. So I'm just going to leave that import here since we are going to need it later. So now let's go ahead and create our reducer. So we already created a reducer for our auth. So why don't we go ahead, just copy all this and just paste it in here. That way we have to do less retyping. And then I'll just remove all of these cases that we had for our auth. Remove these. So remove these here. And instead we're going to have load user profile success and load user profile fail. So if we check out our auth reducers, we have all of these fields here. But we don't really need these here because these are have to do with our profile. Now, one thing when we log in, we are passing back this username. And basically, we're going to have that username here in the auth reducers, and we're also going to need it in our profile reducers. Or why did I close that? So this auth reducer, we don't need these fields here because these have to do with our profile. And we aren't updating them anywhere here. We're just updating username. But in our profile, we do need these. I don't need is authenticated, but I will need username. So now let's go ahead and do our dispatch states. So load user profile success. So if we get a success, what we're going to do is we're going to update these pieces of state. So username will be payload.username. And then we're going to have first name, which is going to be payload.firstname. We're going to have last name. This will be payload.lastname. Then we're going to have our phone. And we're going to have our city. And then in the case of a fail, so in the case of a fail, we're going to have load user profile fail. And we're just going to return, let's just return our state. Actually, no, let's do it like this. I'm just going to update all of these to be empty. All right, so this is how we're going to update our state if we fail to load the profile. All right, so now we can load our user. Now let's go ahead and let's see. So right now in our auth, I'm going to make some changes. And that's basically what this username. I'm going to have this piece of state handled by our profile. So this logout success, I'll remove that here and I'll remove that here. So yeah, I don't want to deal with the username anywhere here, which means also in our accounts views, I don't want to pass back that data. So that piece of data is going to be handled by our load user. So when we sign up, we're not using it. When we log in, here we are passing it back. So I'll just go ahead and remove that. So the only thing we're going to pass back is this success. When we log out, we're not using that. And yeah, I don't think we're using that anywhere else. So it's just in the login, so I'm not going to pass back that piece of state. We will let the profile handle that. Okay. So now with that, I can go ahead and open up my layout. And let's bring in that action. So import load user. This is coming from actions profile. So load user. So we're going to check authenticated, then we're going to load the user. And then I also have to bring that in here. So load user. So there you go. Now we can go ahead and whenever we refresh, we're going to load the user. And then there's one more place where we want to load this user, and that's in our auth actions. So right above here, I'm going to import load user. This will come from profile. And then I'm going to just make sure I dispatch that whenever I log in. So I'm going to dispatch load user. Okay, so now we handle the case where we log in. We're going to get the user profile. And whenever we refresh, we're also going to get the user profile. So let me just double check, make sure that everything's in order. So we're not using the username here. And then I believe, let's see. So let me double check my login action creator real quick. Okay, yeah, so right here, I was passing back response.data.username. And this was on a success. I do not want to do this. So I just want to do the type of login success. And then whenever we have a login success, then all we're going to do is update this is authenticated. So that's right here is right here is authenticated is true. So we are not touching anything with the username here. So I believe everything looks good now. So let me go ahead and build this. So npm run build, and we'll test things out. All right. So now let's refresh. So on our refresh, we should get our authenticated action creator and our load action creator. So they both ended up running, so that's good. And of course, we're not authenticated right now, so this ended up failing. Now we have our auth, which is just going to have this piece of state. And then we're going to have our profile, which has our user profile. So our username, first name, last name, phone, and city. So this is a nicer way to organize this. Now let me go ahead and log in. So I'll log in with Billy. So let's log in. So we're redirected here. So we managed to log in. Now let's check this out. So is authenticated is true. And let's check out our profile. And right now we get username Billy. Okay, but we do not see these other pieces of state. So let's see what happened here. All right, let me go into Postman. I'm going to log in with Billy and see kind of what's going on. So my user is authenticated, and let me get my user profile. Oh, okay. Yeah, so now I realize what's going on. So right now, I was doing response.data.firstname, response.data.lastname, but I should be doing response.data.profile. So that is why this is happening. So if I go back into my profile action, so right now as the payload, we're returning response.data. So this will give me my profile and my username. And then if I go into my reducers, so payload.username, this is correct, but then these ones should all be different. So I want to instead do payload.profile.firstname, last name, phone, and city. So that's basically what's happening there. And then this one should be okay. So let's rebuild this and test it out again. All right, let's refresh this, relog in with Billy. And now let's check out what our dispatch states look like. And there we go. Now we actually have our complete profile here. And we also have is authenticated is true. So this is exactly what we want to see here. Now, last thing I'm going to test out real quick is just I'm going to update my profile. And then make sure that we are getting that. So I'm going to update Billy's profile. So this is going to be first name Billy, Billy Smith, and just leave all this the same. So this is the correct CSRF token. So let me go ahead and send this. And now we get back this updated profile. So now if I go here and refresh, I should see that updated profile. And there it is. So username Billy, first name Billy, last name Smith, phone, and city. So yeah, now this works. So that is everything I wanted to cover in this section. So now we have functionality for keeping a user logged in when the page is refreshed, and we have functionality for retrieving the user profile in our front end. So then in the next section, we're gonna handle kind of configuring this dashboard and letting a user update the profile. And then I'll see how much more we have from there. But yeah, hope you enjoyed this section. Make sure to leave a nice big like and subscribe to the channel if you enjoy this kind of content. And make sure to join the greatest Facebook community, the Web Development Kings, right in the description. And also like the Facebook page. And that way, if you have any kind of questions and want to get in touch with me personally, relating some kind of questions you have, either with these tutorials or something outside these tutorials, then that way you can personally ask me something and I can give you an answer. And then with that, I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you in the next video.